The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning demanding I pay $47,000 in fines for living in a house I'd owned for 12 years. Except I wasn't even in their HOA. Picture this. I'm standing in my kitchen, coffee mug steaming in my hand, staring at legal papers that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. Outside my window, there's Karen Whitmore, HOA President Extraordinaire, pointing at my house from her perfectly manicured lawn like she's directing an invasion. My reaction? I took another sip of coffee and thought, lady, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. What would you do if someone tried to force you into an HOA you never joined? Drop your wildest HOA horror story below. I guarantee mine tops them all. My name's Garrett Mitchell, and 12 years ago, I thought I'd bought my slice of the American dream. Turns out I'd walked into a nightmare designed by a woman who makes dictators look reasonable. 2011, fresh out of the army after 2 tours in Afghanistan, I used my VA loan to buy 2.3 acres of pure freedom. The 1970s ranch house sits on the original Hendricks farm, pre-subdivision when this area was still cow pastures and common sense. Willow Creek runs between my property and the fancy Willow Brook Estates development. That babbling water became my daily reminder that some boundaries are carved by nature, not lawyers. I'm an independent contractor doing electrical and plumbing work. After my divorce, this place became our fortress of sanity for me and my 16-year-old daughter, Emma. I built a workshop where the sweet smell of pine sawdust mixes with WD-40. Then came Karen Whitmore, the human equivalent of a homeowners association fever dream. Karen's 52, drives a spotless white Lexus, and rules her $800,000 McMansion kingdom like Marie Antoinette with a measuring tape. 6 years as HOA president have turned her into a suburban surveillance specialist. Her husband Brad isn't just some passive bystander. He's county planning commissioner, a detail that becomes crucial later. The first encounter happened at my mailbox on a Tuesday morning. Karen marched across the street wearing pearls and indignation, clutching her clipboard like a weapon. Your workshop violates neighborhood standards, she declared, not bothering with introductions. I looked at my property, then at hers across the creek. Ma'am, I appreciate the concern, but I'm not in your HOA. Her smile could have flash frozen coffee. We'll see about that. That was 18 months ago. What followed was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Karen began timing my work schedule with military precision, photographing every visitor like she was building a surveillance file. The woman actually bought binoculars. But Emma's 16th birthday party pushed Karen over the edge. Nothing wild, just backyard barbecue with friends. Music until 9:30 p.m. Karen called police twice that night. Both times officers found 0 violations. The next morning changed everything. Emma found the violation notice tucked under my windshield wiper. It listed my workshop, garden fence, and gravel driveway as unapproved exterior modifications carrying $500 fines each. Dad, Emma said, studying the document. This woman has seriously lost her mind. Here's what Karen was betting on. That I'd fold like every other working-class family she'd terrorized into submission. Pay up, shut up, tear down my workshop, and fall in line with her suburban police state. But if Karen had bothered checking county records, she'd have discovered something that would eventually destroy her entire empire. My property was intentionally excluded from her HOA for reasons that would become explosive. I walked to my fence line and stared across Willow Creek at Karen's perfect house. Lady, I told the morning air, you just declared war on the wrong veteran. 3 days later, Karen launched her opening salvo with the precision of a suburban missile strike. The official HOA violation notice arrived via certified mail, a full-color, professionally printed document. The violations read like a property owner's nightmare. Unapproved exterior modifications, non-conforming fence materials, unauthorized gravel driveway surface, and failure to maintain landscaping standards. Each violation carried a $500 fine with 30 days to comply or face legal proceedings. My first stop was the county courthouse, where the musty smell of old documents filled the air. The clerk helped me pull my original deed from 1970. The deed was crystal clear. My property boundaries predated Willowbrook Estates by 40 years. Survey measurements showed exactly what I suspected. I was 47 feet outside HOA jurisdiction, separated by Willow Creek. I called the HOA management company. The confused receptionist admitted they had no record of my address. Sir, if you're not in our database, you're not in our HOA, she said like she was explaining math to a kindergartner. 2 days later, Karen showed up at my door with reinforcements. Her brother-in-law Rick, a part-time surveyor whose biggest qualification seemed to be owning an orange vest. Karen claimed the creek boundary had shifted and demanded access to re-establish property lines. Ma'am, I said, holding up my county-certified survey. Water doesn't move property lines. That's not how law works. Karen's face flushed red. We'll see what my attorney says about that. While Karen was busy playing property line police, I was discovering something explosive about Willowbrook Estates' founding. Mrs. Patterson, my 83-year-old neighbor who remembered when this area was cow pastures, invited me for coffee and gossip that changes legal cases. Strangest thing, she said, stirring sugar with the precision of someone who'd outlived 3 HOA presidents. The original subdivision plans clearly showed your property excluded from the development. Environmental concerns about the creek flood zone. But Brad pushed the approval through anyway. His construction company got the contract for 60% of those houses. The pieces clicked together. When the enemy reveals a pattern, you exploit it. Karen's intimidation campaign had backfired spectacularly, creating her own resistance movement. The Kowalski family approached me at the grocery store, speaking in hushed tones. They'd been forced to remove their kid's swing set and spend $8,000 in modifications to satisfy Karen's demands. Mrs. Patterson mentioned the Rodriguez family, who'd moved away after Karen's harassment escalated to calling their employer. A pattern emerged. Karen targeted working families who couldn't afford extended legal battles while mysteriously ignoring violations by wealthier neighbors. While Karen was hiring expensive lawyers, she was actually building my case for me. Karen's next move came with the weight of expensive intimidation. A thick envelope from Pembroke & Associates landed in my mailbox. The cease and desist letter was 4 pages of legal theater demanding I stop all unauthorized activities and submit to HOA jurisdiction. The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted permission to trespass so she could prove I was trespassing. I contacted Janet Reeves, a local attorney who specialized in veterans' rights. Janet took one look at Karen's legal threat and actually laughed. "Garrett," she said, "this woman just handed us a harassment case on a silver platter." Janet's counter cease and desist was poetry in legal form, citing property rights law, harassment statutes, and warning that further contact would result in immediate legal action. Karen's reaction was predictably unhinged. She organized an emergency HOA meeting about the boundary dispute crisis, spreading propaganda about my illegal business operation driving down property values. But my home-based electrical business was perfectly legal, properly zoned and licensed. Facts never stopped a good propaganda campaign. County code enforcement showed up at my door in response to multiple anonymous complaints. Inspector Phillips spent 30 minutes confirming everything was legal. "Off the record," he said, "whoever's filing these complaints is wasting everyone's time. Your setup is cleaner than most commercial operations I inspect." Karen's surveillance operation escalated to placing orange survey stakes on my property at dawn. My security cameras captured everything. Rick measuring distances, then deliberately positioning markers to make my workshop appear to encroach on HOA territory. When confronted, Rick stammered and fled. Emma started feeling unsafe walking to her school bus. Karen had been timing her daily surveillance drives to coincide with Emma's schedule. One morning, Emma found Karen parked at the creek bridge, photographing our house with a telephoto lens. "Dad, this is getting seriously creepy," Emma said. That's when I knew Karen had crossed from harassment into intimidation. Mrs. Patterson quietly mentioned she'd been recording Karen's meetings for years. "Honey," she said, pouring tea with steady hands, "I've got recordings that would curl your hair." Karen hadn't just picked a fight with me. She declared war on the entire neighborhood's collective memory of her abuse. Karen's nuclear option arrived on a Thursday morning when the sheriff's deputy knocked on my door serving papers for a $47,000 lawsuit. The complaint read like a fever dream, claiming I'd somehow agreed to HOA membership by owning property within a 5-mile radius of her subdivision. She demanded immediate compliance, an injunction preventing property modifications, and enough legal fees to buy a decent car. Sitting in Janet's office, I watched my attorney's expression shift from professional concern to barely contained rage. "Garrett," Janet said, Flipping through pages of legal fiction, this woman is either completely delusional or running the most expensive bluff in county history. Janet's investigation revealed something sinister. Court records showed Karen had filed 6 previous boundary disputes. 3 families had moved away rather than fight expensive legal battles. The Rodriguez family had actually lost their home to foreclosure after legal fees mounted beyond their ability to pay. Karen wasn't just a neighborhood nuisance. She was a serial predator targeting working-class families with surgical precision. The pattern was chilling. Identify families who couldn't afford extended litigation, manufacture violations, escalate legal pressure until they either complied or fled. Wealthy neighbors mysteriously never faced the same scrutiny for identical violations. Karen launched her media offensive, calling local TV news about a property value crisis. She staged photo ops pointing dramatically at my workshop like it was a nuclear waste facility. Channel 7 aired the story, HOA Battle Divides Neighborhood, featuring Karen explaining how one person's refusal to follow rules was destroying property values. They didn't interview me because Karen had told them I was unavailable for comment, which was news to me. But Karen's media blitz backfired spectacularly. Emma's friend Madison became our inside intelligence source, revealing that Karen had promised lower HOA fees to neighbors who supported her lawsuit. More damaging, Madison recorded Karen bragging to her book club about finally finding a way to get rid of that contractor and his noisy workshop. The conversation revealed Karen's true motive wasn't property values, it was personal vindictiveness. The harassment escalated beyond legal boundaries into outright sabotage. Someone scattered roofing nails across my driveway, puncturing 2 tires on my work truck. Emma's car got keyed in the school parking lot with deliberate scratches spelling move. Anonymous flyers appeared throughout the neighborhood, featuring photos of my workshop with warnings about unlicensed electrical work endangering your family's safety. Several of my regular clients received warning calls about hiring unlicensed contractors. My business income dropped 30% as nervous customers chose other electricians. The psychological pressure was designed to break me. But Karen had miscalculated. She'd never fought someone who'd survived actual combat stress. Compared to insurgent attacks in Afghanistan, suburban psychological warfare felt like performance art. Janet's research uncovered the smoking gun that would change everything. Original county planning documents from 2009 explicitly recommending excluding my property from the subdivision due to creek flood zone regulations. The environmental impact study clearly stated that my parcel should remain separate for ecological preservation. Karen and Brad both knew my property was intentionally excluded, yet they'd spent 18 months claiming the opposite. This wasn't a boundary dispute anymore. This was fraud, conspiracy, and harassment wrapped in legal paperwork. The discovery came from the most unlikely source, a filing cabinet in the courthouse basement. Janet's paralegal Sarah had been digging through environmental impact studies when she found the smoking gun. The 2009 Willowbrook Estates environmental assessment explicitly recommended excluding my property due to creek flood zone regulations. The environmental engineer's signature was followed by a handwritten note. Commissioner Whitmore advised of flood zone concerns. Exclusion mandatory for EPA compliance. Brad hadn't just known about my property's exclusion. He'd been officially warned that including it would violate federal environmental law. But it got worse. The HOA's founding documents contained a signature from Robert Hendricks, previous owner of my parcel. The problem? Robert Hendricks had been dead for 6 months when that signature was allegedly notarized. Handwriting analysis confirmed forgery. Cross-referencing property tax records with Karen's financial history revealed the real motive. Karen's McMansion was drowning in debt. 3 mortgage refinances with monthly payments requiring artificial value inflation or she'd face foreclosure. She'd been using HOA harassment to prop up property values. Every family she'd forced to renovate or relocate had artificially maintained her equity bubble. Mrs. Patterson's treasure trove of recorded HOA meetings provided the final evidence. Her ancient cassette recorder had captured Karen's true confessions during private board discussions. The most damaging recording from March 2022. That contractor's property technically isn't included in our jurisdiction, but he'll never fight us. Working people can't afford lawyers. We just keep the pressure up until he complies or moves away. Another gem from June 2022. Brad says we can't legally force him to join, but what's he going to do? Hire an attorney? People like that always fold when you throw enough legal paperwork at them. The most chilling recording from August 2022. I've finally found a way to get rid of that veteran and his noisy workshop. We'll bury him in legal fees until he breaks. 23 minutes of Karen's own voice documented every word of the conspiracy. But the coup de grace was discovering that Brad's construction company had built 60% of the homes in Willowbrook Estates. Homes sold at inflated prices because buyers believed they were purchasing into a legally constituted HOA. Every sale was potentially fraudulent. Every HOA fee collected was theft. Every violation fine was extortion. The War Council convened in my workshop on a Saturday morning. Janet spread legal documents across my workbench while Mrs. Patterson arrived with coffee strong enough to fuel a legal revolution. The Kowalski family joined us along with the Rodriguez family via video call from their new city. An army of Karen's victims finally ready to fight back. Here's our battle plan, Janet announced, organizing documents with military precision. We file a motion to dismiss Karen's lawsuit based on fraudulent HOA incorporation. Simultaneously, we launch a countersuit for harassment, business interference, and conspiracy. Then we request an emergency injunction preventing the HOA from collecting any fees while we prove their entire legal foundation is built on lies. The evidence assembly felt like building a case against organized crime. County planning documents showed Brad's systematic abuse of his position. Financial records revealed the conflict of interest. Brad's construction company had profited from every family Karen forced into expensive modifications. Video evidence from my security cameras documented 18 months of harassment and attempted intimidation. Our media strategy centered on investigative reporter Sarah Morgan, who specialized in municipal corruption. Janet prepared a press release documenting not just my harassment, but the pattern of targeting working families across multiple years. Professional surveyor confirmed the original boundary measurements. Environmental engineer validated the 2009 flood zone study that Brad had ignored. Handwriting experts' analysis of the forged incorporation documents was devastating. Financial auditors discovered that HOA funds had been systematically misappropriated to pay for Karen's legal campaigns against individual homeowners. Residents had been unknowingly funding their own harassment through mandatory association fees. Behind enemy lines, Madison reported increasing panic at Karen's house. Brad had been spotted shredding documents in his garage, while Karen was attempting to borrow money for escalating legal fees. 3 current HOA board members privately indicated willingness to testify against Karen's leadership. Karen's desperation reached new heights when she showed up at my door with a settlement offer. "Let's be reasonable adults about this," she said, clutching a folder. "I'm prepared to settle this whole misunderstanding for $15,000. Standing on my porch in her designer blazer, Karen looked like a real estate agent trying to sell swampland. "Ma'am," I replied, leaning against my doorframe with casual confidence. "I don't negotiate with extortionists." Her smile cracked like cheap paint. "You'll regret this decision, Mr. Mitchell." The County Planning Commission's public hearing was scheduled for a Thursday evening that would determine whether Karen's suburban empire survived or crumbled. Karen arrived early, transforming the municipal building's conference room into her personal war room. She'd hired a presentation consultant and wore an expensive suit that screamed, "Respectable homeowner under attack." Her PowerPoint presentation was suburban propaganda. Color-coded charts showing alleged property value decline, professional photographs of my workshop shot from unflattering angles, and testimonials from 3 neighbors promised lower HOA fees for their cooperation. Emma and Madison sat in the back row, phones recording everything. Mrs. Patterson organized our supporting witnesses while Janet prepared legal responses. Sarah Morgan brought a photographer, turning the hearing into the public spectacle Karen had desperately wanted to avoid. Karen's opening performance was pure theater, emotional appeals about protecting family neighborhoods from commercial intrusion, complete with crocodile tears and dramatic gestures toward charts showing her manufactured property value crisis. "This illegal business operation," she declared, pointing at blown-up photos of my workshop, "has endangered our children's safety and destroyed the community standards that hard-working families depend on." The audience murmured appreciatively until the county engineer stood up and shattered Karen's presentation with a single question. Ma'am, according to your survey measurements, this property extends 30 feet into Willow Creek. Are you claiming the creek moved? Karen's consultant scrambled to explain boundary shift calculations while the professional surveyor in the audience visibly winced. The technical impossibility of Karen's claims became obvious to everyone except Karen herself. My response was deliberately measured. No emotional appeals, just facts laid out with military precision. Original property deed from 1970. Professional survey showing 47 feet between my workshop and HOA jurisdiction. Environmental impact study proving intentional exclusion for flood zone protection. The bombshell witness testimony began with Mrs. Patterson's cassette recordings. The ancient tape player speakers crackled to life, filling the room with Karen's own voice from March 2022. That contractor's property technically isn't included in our jurisdiction, but he'll never fight us. Working people can't afford lawyers. Karen's face went white as her own words condemned her, but the recording continued. We just keep the pressure up until he complies or moves away. It's worked on 3 other families. The handwriting expert's testimony was devastating. Using projected images filling the entire wall, he demonstrated how Robert Hendricks's signature had been forged 6 months after his death. The analysis was so clear that even non-experts could see the simulation marks. The pressure patterns and hesitation marks indicate deliberate forgery, he explained. The deceased date eliminates any possibility of legitimate execution. Karen's meltdown began during the environmental engineer's testimony about creek ecosystem damage. She interrupted witnesses with increasingly hostile objections, accusing everyone of conspiracy. This is all fake news and paid testimony, she shouted, standing despite the commission chair's warnings. These people are lying to protect their illegal friend. The final nail in Karen's coffin came from the HOA management company representative, who confirmed systematic financial irregularities and terminated Willowbrook's contract immediately. We found evidence of unauthorized legal fee assessments, misappropriated funds, and violations of fiduciary responsibility, the representative testified. Mrs. Whitmore has been using association funds for personal legal battles without board approval. Karen's complete breakdown was spectacular. She grabbed the microphone, refusing to yield while screaming about conspiracies and persecution. Security officers physically escorted her from the building while she shouted threats about getting revenge on every lying neighbor. The commission's unanimous vote was swift and merciless. Willowbrook Estates' HOA incorporation was fraudulent and legally void. All actions against excluded properties were invalid. Environmental remediation was required immediately. Criminal referrals would be forwarded to the district attorney. Outside the courthouse, Sarah Morgan interviewed me while Karen attempted a counter-interview that devolved into incoherent ranting about veteran conspiracies and corrupt officials. The contrast was stark. Measured responses to legal victory versus unhinged accusations from someone whose world was collapsing. 6 months after Karen's spectacular courtroom breakdown, justice arrived with the beautiful sound of handcuffs clicking. Karen and Brad both faced multiple felony charges: fraud, conspiracy, harassment, and document forgery. Karen's plea bargain was poetry in legal form. 18 months probation, full restitution to every family she'd terrorized, community service cleaning the very creek she'd tried to destroy, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board. Brad lost his county position, faced professional licensing revocation, and watched his construction empire collapse as clients fled. My countersuit settlement. Let's just say Emma's college fund went from community college maybe to any university she wants. 3 other families received enough restitution to erase years of forced modifications and emotional trauma. The real victory was watching Willowbrook transform from a surveillance state into an actual community. The neighborhood reorganized as the voluntary Willowbrook Neighbors Association with Mrs. Patterson as unanimously elected president. Her first act, establishing the annual Willow Creek Environmental Festival, where families celebrate conservation instead of measuring grass height with rulers. My workshop became community headquarters where coffee mingles with sawdust and genuine laughter. We plan charity drives, organize youth baseball teams, and hold monthly potlucks that would have given Karen stress ulcers. Emma loves hosting her friends here, their voices filling spaces that once echoed with tension and fear. The environmental restoration exceeded everyone's dreams. Great blue herons returned to the creek for the first time in decades, their majestic calls replacing Karen's shrill complaints. River otters play in water that runs clean again, while kingfishers dive for fish that thrive without chemical runoff from obsessively maintained lawns. The ripple effects spread far beyond our neighborhood. Sarah Morgan's investigation uncovered 12 other fraudulent HOA incorporations across 3 states. The resulting legislation, dubbed the Willowbrook Act, requires independent oversight for all new HOA formations and mandatory financial transparency for existing boards. Attorney Janet now specializes in HOA fraud cases, using our template to liberate other communities from petty dictatorships. Veterans organizations teach our legal strategies in workshops titled Defeating Domestic Terrorists with Clipboards. My favorite outcome is watching Emma's confidence bloom. She testifies at state legislative hearings about HOA reform with the poise of someone who learned early that standing up to bullies protects everyone who can't fight back. Karen's fate was exactly what she deserved. Foreclosure claimed her McMansion. Brad divorced her to escape the scandal, and she moved to a cramped apartment where nobody measures her grass or times her garbage placement. Neighbors occasionally spot her driving past her former kingdom, but she never stops, probably afraid we'd all come outside to wave. The Willowbrook Creek Environmental Scholarship now sends local students to study conservation law, funded by settlement money that Karen inadvertently provided through her crimes. Our annual Property Rights Day festival draws families from 5 counties who want to celebrate communities built on cooperation instead of control. Mrs. Patterson finished her neighborhood history with a chapter titled, How One Tyrant United 50 Families Against Suburban Fascism. It's required reading for anyone considering HOA board service in our county. Last month, a homeowner from Arizona called about similar harassment. Emma suggested we start a nonprofit helping HOA victims fight back with proven legal strategies. The Free the Neighborhoods Foundation launches next spring. Right now, I'm watching sunset paint the creek gold while Emma and her friends build rope swings that would have violated 17 imaginary regulations under Karen's regime. The sound of genuine community fills air that once carried threats and intimidation. This is what America should sound like. Kids laughing, neighbors helping neighbors, and nobody measuring anyone's grass with rulers. Your turn. Drop your wildest HOA horror stories in the comments below. Have you faced down a neighborhood dictator? Share this story with anyone dealing with HOA harassment. Knowledge is power, and bullies only win when good people stay silent. Hit that subscribe button for more HOA stories. We're exposing petty tyrants and celebrating communities that fight back, because unfortunately, there's never a shortage of Karens who need reminding that property rights trump their personal convenience. Next week, how a retired teacher dissolved an HOA by proving their president embezzled $200,000 in landscaping fees. Trust me, you won't want to miss that takedown. Remember, the best defense against neighborhood dictators is refusing to be intimidated by people whose only power comes from clipboards and bad attitudes.